All right, welcome everyone. We have great guests today. First of all, we have Francesco Maino, co-founder of Small Giants, one of the company that E3 Ventures is following and supporting. And with us, we also have Rumen Pozharliev, author of a great article about insect researcher at the LUISS University in Rome, and overall great research background in the crossover between social context, neuromarketing, behavioral psychology, and its application to actually marketing, really practical and really pragmatic. So welcome everyone.
Hi, welcome. Thank you, Giacomo.
Hey, Giacomo, thanks for the invitation. It's a real pleasure being here, guys.
All right, let's have Francesco kick off the meeting, just trying to explain a little bit the connection between Small Giants. So if you want to recap a bit what Small Giants is doing and how exactly got Rumen involved into their work.
Yeah, for sure. So what we do as Small Giants is we make insect-based savory snacks, such as crackers, so cracker bites, and in the future we will have other kind of healthy snack. And as a startup working in this kind of field, we are always kind of work in progress. So at any time we are looking for what will be next. And also in this case, when we got in touch with Rumen, we just finished changing our packaging and also changing and rebranding our identity. And we wanted also to understand a little bit more and to explore what could have been the reaction from people, and try to understand more in general how could be the consumer attitude towards some different features. So we just change our packaging. I'm showing you just as an example. This is the kind of product that we do. So these are the cracker bites. This is the new packaging, but we also had the previous one. So when Rumen got in touch, the idea was to explore a little better what this kind of new visual identity could have had as an effect to the consumer. So this was kind of the initial framework, and we started from here basically.
Awesome. So thank you, Francesco. So let's start with the Rumen line of research. So if you can tell us more about what are you focusing on, and how did you get there?
Welcome everybody. First time marketing professor at LUISS, apart from being a senior researcher at the X.ITE Research Center at LUISS. I'm teaching 4 courses at LUISS University, another 10 at the business school. I'm also director of the major in retailing, e-commerce, and omnichannel at the business school, which is pretty related to what we have been doing in the past few years. I'm also teaching at Temple University in Philadelphia. Again, marketing and leadership, 2 courses there as well, and also a summer course on neuromarketing. But in between all these teaching, I have also time to do research. And the topic that excites me the most in the past 2 years is exactly not just insect-based food, but sustainable food in general, and how to first discover the major psychological barriers, the major psychological adoption barriers that can hamper the adoption of these sustainable products, and then find ways, and by ways we mean I mean practical marketing actions that can, if not eliminate entirely these barriers, at least reduce them and allow consumers, motivate consumers at least to try the products. The idea came from in my neuromarketing class, a presentation on sustainable food. And from there, I got this idea on focusing on insect-based food. And the very first thing that I did is to Google it, go online, see who are the top 10 top major producers in Europe. I've contacted all of them. Apart from Small Giants, another company, and I'm not going to giving names here, another company contacted me as well, but I was like more willing to work with Small Giants because they were first, the owners of the company were Italians, and I'm working in Italy, so you have a kind of a match here. And the second thing that I liked a lot about them was that these two Italian co-founders and managing directors of the company decided to start their project in UK. So this was like pretty interesting for me. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to understand more. And also Francesco was like pretty open since the beginning, and I appreciate this a lot. And we started like our collaboration, which continues till today. So should I talk about the paper that, I mean, the studies, the set of studies that we did together?
So yeah, so I would first, just to build up for the audience, like the building blocks of your research. So if you can say literally like 10 seconds about what are you guys doing in neuromarketing, because this is a relatively new discipline, so which is a combination in general of neuropsychology and marketing, and as the word kind of suggests, but it's way deeper than that. So if you can elaborate just a little bit on that.
To be honest, it's new for the common people, but it's nothing new for the scientific community because neuromarketing has been there for almost 25 years now. Mm-hmm. And all major multinational companies, again, I'm not giving names, they are already using neuromarketing in their research for more than 20 years now. There are also many examples in Italy. To be honest, all the big companies, especially the ones operating in the service industry in Italy, they, in one way or another, take advantage of the actionable insights that the neuromarketing methods can generate. Basically, neuromarketing allows you to access the black box of consumers by obtaining answers without asking questions. What we do is we look at their physiological responses, hormonal responses, brain responses, visual behavior in relation to marketing actions, commercials, product packaging, marketing communication in general. And of course, we combine these physiological and brain and hormonal responses and measures with more traditional approaches like surveys and other qualitative techniques that I'm not going to explain in detail now. And the main idea here is that by combining these traditional and neuromarketing methods and measures, you get the complete picture. You get the conscious, you get the unconscious, and you can better explain how consumers respond to your marketing actions. The most common methods that we use are eye tracker to measure the visual behavior. We use EEG to measure the brain responses, and we use the biometrics, namely galvanic skin response and heart rate variability to measure the emotional responses of consumers on both dimensions, on valence and on intensity.
Fantastic.
And this is pretty much what we do in neuromarketing.
All right, let's dive then into the novel food space and the insect space in particular. So let's talk about the research that you have conducted and which is currently under revision in some of the major papers. And what was the goal of the research project?
So let me first say that there are many benefits of consuming insect-based food, both for individuals in terms of nutrition for individuals, of course, and for the society, feed conversion efficiency, freshwater consumption, and especially reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. That said, existing social cultural norms must undergo significant alterations before consumers decide to give it a try, to replace at least partially traditional food products with those containing insects. And it's disgusting seems to be the primary reason that consumers use to resist trying insect-based food products. We are not the first to do research in this area. To be honest, there have been many studies addressing the relation between the main psychological barriers and consumer behavioral intentions toward insect-based foods. But we are the first to focus on the actual marketing actions that companies can implement in order to reduce these adoption barriers. And this is our main contribution to the existing literature, that we are the first that studied this, I wouldn't say problem, but I mean, it is a problem. Study it from a marketing perspective, not just from a psychological or food perspective.
So you're trying to single out and analyze the behavior of disgust that people essentially like feel or they come up with when asked to actually try insect-based food. So in a nutshell, you're like trying to dissect that behavior and see exactly what can we actively do about it.
Yeah, first we replicated what has been already known in the scientific community, that disgust is the most important adoption barrier of insect-based products. And then we tried the most common marketing approaches, both from communication and segmentation perspective, in order to understand how to reduce, at least partially, this perceived disgust. Because here it's all about perception. It's not about the actual disgust of the product. It's not about, because after people try it, they see that it's not disgusting. So we focus on the perception of disgust. We don't focus on the actual disgust as a post-consumption response, because we see that the main barrier, the main problem with insect-based food is not that the consumers try them and then they say, it's not good, I'm not going to try it anymore. It's actually deciding to try the product in the first place. And this is what we pose as our main objective here. Try to reduce the perceived disgust, so to say, try in some way to manage their expectations in order to motivate them to try the product, because once they try it, they see that it's not that bad. So that was the main idea of this research here.
Fantastic.
And as with any innovation, because insect-based food are innovation, it's an innovation in the food industry. As with any innovation, one of the very first things that you need to do, apart from identifying what are the main adoption barriers, is to identify this segment of the population, the so-called innovators, this segment of the population that is most likely to try to adopt the product initially. Because these are the consumers, this is the segment of the market that will allow you to grow. First, to build some awareness, because that's the main issue, at least at the beginning. Build some awareness, because many consumers don't know that this product exists on the market. Build this awareness, make the consumption of insect-based food more commonplace. And by doing this, hoping that in near future, this perceived disgust will be reduced just because the product has become more commonplace. But in order to get there, consumers need marketing comes into play. because with your marketing actions, you can kind of induce consumers to give it a try, to try the product.
Awesome. So let's also dive deeper into the theoretical framework that you set up in order to conduct that experiment. So how did it start? How you executed that? And then we'll talk about the results later
on. First, we started with a literature review, as usual. And we found that disgust has traditionally been considered as a basic emotion that is universal for all humans. And although disgust is a universal emotion, factors leading to disgust responses can differ across individuals and cultures. And this is why Asian people, some nations in Asia, have already adopted these products. For them, consuming insect-based products and insects in general, it's not like perceived as something new and something disgusting. So we started from there. We focused on Westerners and we tried to identify what are the main adoption barriers from them. We studied the previous literature and we saw that the main psychological barriers that has been studied are perceived disgust, perceived risk of being like poisoned, that the food is not safe. We also look at some moderators, and by moderators we mean segmentation criteria. And the most studied one were, as you can imagine, gender and age, education, cultural differences, familiarity with the product, and food neophobia. And this is the first one that we have decided to use for one of our studies, food neophobia, but I'll get back to this in a few minutes. Basically, the very first thing that we did is to replicate previous findings by looking at how perceived disgust affects consumer responses to traditional versus insect-based food products, and we found like a significant effect. Basically, disgust was driving the reluctance of consumers to try insect-based foods, and from there, then we continued with all marketing actions that we can study in order to accelerate, in order to reduce perceived disgust and accelerate the adoption of insect-based food products, starting by the product type. So that's the very first thing that we look at, the product type. In the literature, there is this important distinction between hedonic and utilitarian products, hedonic and functional. And we did a pretest. We saw that on the hedonic side, the most common products, insect-based products, are crackers and the chips made of insect-based food. And on the utilitarian side, we have a protein bar and protein powder and everything that is like more on the functional side. And we found that, of course, again, by looking at previous literature, an important moderator here, which is the health consciousness of the respondents, basically their lifestyle, whether they care about what they eat, whether they have a healthy lifestyle or not. And what we found is that more healthy individuals, more health conscious individuals, they show the reduced perceived disgust toward more utilitarian products like protein powder and protein bar made of insects, and less health conscious individuals, so to say, those that are less attentive at what they eat, at what they put in their mouth. They showed less perceived disgust, and as a result of that, higher willingness to try insect-based food products. So that was the first step. Actually, before we did that, we did something that is called implicit association test. So we also tested responses on implicit level, on unconscious level. Why? Because most companies, and this is what Francesco told us, most companies in this industry base their positioning, basically their marketing communication, on three main elements: sustainability, nutrition, and taste. So this is how they position their product. But by looking at these implicit responses, we found that that's wrong. I mean, they've been doing the wrong thing, because in the implicit, in the associative network of the average consumer, these constructs are not strongly related. So there is no strong association between them. Actually, it was the opposite. The average consumer implicitly considers insect-based food as less sustainable, less tasteful, and less nutritious. I mean, this is what we saw on implicit level, unconscious level. And from there, we kind of focused on these three elements. First, sustainability. We translated this in health consciousness as the moderator. And as I said, we looked at the different type of products, and I've already said what we found. Then we looked at the taste of it, and again, here it's all about perception. So what we saw is that most companies, and this is, I mean, it's a must. If you're having like an insect-based food product, then you need in some way to promote that on your product packaging. And we saw that all companies operating in this industry, they have an image of an insect on their packaging. And this is actually the second thing that we did. We manipulated this element of the packaging, either by keeping the image of the insect or removing it. And we found that when you remove the image of the insect, the perceived disgust is reduced, and this leads to an increase in with the willingness to try the product.
So basically, you were testing like a control group with a product that has like a clear insect images, and other product that mentioned insect, but there was no visual cue to that, right? And
yes,
then you said,
yes, I mean, we didn't test the real product, because then we have to control for a lot of things. We have created a fictitious one by just taking a plain package of chips, and we kind of put some information in it, a fictitious brand, a fictitious nutritious table, some other fictitious elements. And then the only manipulation that we did, the only element that we changed on the package, was the image of the insect. So with and without the image of the insect. And we found that the package without the image is actually the one that reduces the perceived disgust and increase the intention to.
Awesome. What actually corroborates this position, and I found it very interesting, is that we've been talking with some people in the industry, in the edible insect industry, especially one which is making cricket flour with a special technology, and she's well known in Italy, and she's also kind of pushing how exactly insect should be marketed. And she was telling us that every time that people interview her, or she speaks, she explicitly asks not to use like images of a live insect that can elicit disgust. So that is something that in field it's totally tested, and it's in line perfectly with what you mentioned. So it's interesting, like just make justice to how exactly we represent food. So that's really interesting.
The last thing that we did, and we did it on over 2 stages. We did a lab experiment where we tested the new and the old packaging of Small Giants, of Cricket initially, and then Small Giants, because they changed the brand name and also they changed the product packaging. And we found that the new packaging with the new brand name compared to the old one performs better in terms of reducing the perceived disgust and increasing the intention to try the product. We deep dived into this with a follow-up study, an online study, and we looked at the one specific element of the packaging, which was the image of the insect. Since they kept the image of the insect, actually they did really good, because eliminating the image of the insect from the package signals to the consumers that there is something wrong. If they are selling us insect-based food, but they are not showing the image of the insect on the package, it means that they are hiding something, that they are afraid of something. And this is not good. And actually, Small Giants, they have adopted the best thing. I mean, that they opted for the best option here to make the insect less insect-like and more like human-like. By increasing the anthropomorphism of the insect, they made it more human-like. And we found, because we did this study as well, we used perceived anthropomorphism as a mediator, and we found that when the image of the insect is perceived as a more human-like, this reduces the perceived disgust, which in turn increases the willingness to try the product. So making the image of the insect more human-like is the best strategy in terms of marketing communication on the package. This is what we found with our last study.
And Rumen, I'm just curious. I just wanted to ask if this is something you already found out in your personal experience as a researcher. So when you are switching to something is like more like a human and less like what it is in reality. So in our case, it's just an insect, but I'm thinking about maybe other meat-based product or other kind of product. So this is a common switch that is happening in the consumer mind that they can
making and I'm not talking about only insects here, but making something that is initially perceived as less human-like and making it more human-like is something very common in the marketing research community. I have another paper published on service robots in can I say the name of the paper?
Yeah, of course. If it's published,
psychology and marketing. I have a paper published in Psychology and Marketing on service robots, and this is another big research field where people look at anthropomorphism as a mediator. So basically, the idea here is that by making the service robots and artificial intelligence and chatbots and apps more human-like, you manage to reduce these adoption barriers. So this is like a key. Of course, there is this uncanny valley, a very famous one, which says that you need to do that up to a certain extent. I mean, you cannot make it look like a real human, because then you enter in another dimension, which can be very detrimental for your marketing action. So you need to make it more human-like, but up to a certain extent. Okay. And yes, it is very common. Service robots, chatbots, artificial intelligence, everything that is aiming to replace human labor. That's one of the most important mediators that we're looking at. A mediator that is also important for sustainable food, insect-based food in this case.
Very interesting. So let's focus on actually, the practical result of your study. So the first takeaway to company operating in the insect sector, or actually novel foods in general, is that anthropomorphism up to a certain level is definitely like a great way to market the product. Yeah, let's go maybe through like sort of like what is applicable immediately in marketing for a brand. That's the kind of the takeaways. Yeah.
The first managerial implication relates to the segmentation and targeting of potential consumers, because it is an emerging global trend. Eating insect-based food is still far from reaching the stage of being adopted by the majority of individuals. So as I said previously, first you need to identify the innovators, the first adopters. And this is the very first thing that we have found, that more health conscious individuals report reduced disgust to utilitarian insect-based products like protein bar, and marketeers might therefore include health conscious measures among their segmentation criteria and use the results of these variables to better allocate their marketing resources and tailor their marketing activities. I can give you some examples. For instance, financial reward programs which aim to induce consumers to try the products could seek to motivate more health-conscious consumers to consider utilitarian insect-based products. I don't know if small giants is already doing that, but maybe this is something that they could consider. The second managerial implication is for product packaging actions. Product-based, sorry, but my is here, my wife and my son, so, and I need to take care of the fire. That's why I'm.
Don't worry, don't worry. We can cut this part out. Don't worry. So if you need to do it, maximum relaxation.
So, product. Second managerial implication is about the product packaging. As we said, the image of the insect is a big factor affecting consumer behavior. Of course, there was also previous research suggesting that the visual appearance of an insect can create this expectation of disgust and then affect consumer behavior. We found that the visual appearance of the real insect on the product packaging can also trigger disgust-based food rejection. And in this case, our results align with past studies that found that, they studied real insects, not processed insects. In our case, we focus on the image of the insect on the product packaging. Thus, in practical terms, our results suggest that marketers should either entirely remove the image of the insect from their product package, or at least make it less realistic, so to say, make it more human-like. Even though, however, I previously said, even though our findings suggest that removing the image of the insect from the product packaging can have an immediate beneficial effect on perceived disgust, removing any reference to insects can be perceived as a deceptive strategy and therefore lead to negative consumer reactions. Moreover, hiding any mention of insects may reduce disgust in short run. You can have some immediate results, let's say in 6 months or in 12 months, but this may actually in the long term amplify the disgust, the negative response of consumers, since it perpetuates the notion that consuming insect-based food is not normal. So it's something that is uncommon. Therefore, the approach that small giants have adopted by making the insect image less realistic, more human-like, could reduce the disgust in short term and at the same time increase public exposure to insect-based food, thus making consumers perceive them as less novel, as less deviant from society's food norms in the Western world. And a final practical implication of our work is for communication of product benefits. As we said at the beginning, also our implicit tests show that marketeers have to be very careful when attempting to promote product healthiness and sustainability especially with the help of rational, utilitarian, and logic-based information, especially through product packaging, because we saw that these are not important, at least not at this stage of the adoption process. These are not important factors that can reduce disgust and increase the consumer intention to try the product. So it's not about healthiness, it's not about sustainability, it's not about rational, logic-based information, it's not about the nutrition qualities of the product, society benefits, and so on and so forth. It's about perceived disgust, and you can only reduce perceived disgust by looking at these unconscious drivers of it. So that's the last takeaway. So what does it mean in terms of communication? Focus more on, how can I say it, on hedonic appeals. Focus more on hedonic appeals, not so much on functional appeals. Don't promote the fact it's nutritional, it's sustainable, it's good for society, it's healthy, but promote more hedonic experiences, like consuming insect-based foods is cool, right? It's something different. It's cool. So this is something that companies should focus on in terms of marketing communication and brand position.
No, I like the approach, because that's very contrarian on what is happening right now on the market, and Francesco can confirm, like, people are pushing sort of the sustainability part, they're pushing how exactly the impact on the planet is like helpful and so on and so forth, actually appealing to the rational side of the brain. But as you said,
it's sad to say, but nobody cares about that.
Super interesting. Awesome. Very good. Francesco, what is your takeaway? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that in some ways maybe this could be not the first touch point. So maybe the first touch points to a potential consumer, it could be driven by either the hedonistic part or maybe also curiosity. This is something we see like every day. So one of the main drivers is also just curiosity. So of course, curiosity is also linked to how you communicate the kind of product you are doing, but at the same time, is a very a very strong driver, but also a flexible one. So you can use it in many different ways. And I mean, all these kind of takeaways for us, they are super useful, and some of them is something we have been thinking about, and in some ways we are also implementing. For example, like, actually this is kind of exactly what we also want to communicate as a brand, as a product. Insects are cool because they are incredibly cool, actually. And you don't I mean, you should say that also talking to the rational mind of people, but at the same time, you can just communicate that on a second layer. So maybe just to those people who are more willing to understand and to explore more, they have a second layer of information, which is more just about what is rational and the real reason why you should start eating insects. But at the same time, what you communicate as the main touch points, yeah, it could be something a little different. So just insects are cool, and this is something you can have with your friends, for example. So our products are also thought to be eaten with friends, with family, as a snack for an aperitivo, this kind of things. So there are just two different layers, in my opinion, and I hope that the second one will be the main one, maybe in the future. But it's very important to know and to understand how to communicate to people.
So, Francesco, to the skeptics that have a hard time kind of overcome disgust, what is your trick to kind of convince them to actually try out some of your snack? Like, I imagine that you and Edo, when you're on the road, you encounter a lot of people kind of putting up walls and barriers. And what is the single most effective thing that you say where people are like, okay, I'll give it a shot?
Maybe it's just thinking about that everything is now traditional once has been innovative. So if you just think about this, you completely change your mind also about food. And it's just a complete switch. And so, I mean, there are so many different examples, such as for Italians being tomatoes, that once were very innovative, now are one of the main food of our tradition. So this is very strong. Another strong one is also about how many people around the world see insect as a normal food, so nothing that special. Yeah, maybe these are the two main one, and the last one is about innovation. So it's just an innovative food, and not just sustainable, which should be the main part, but also innovative. So this is a trigger for curiosity.
Awesome. All right, so we're touching the hour. Thank you, guys. Any final remarks? So, Rumen, from your side, how people can get a hold of you? I know that you've been active on the internet, sort of doing talks. There is a really good TED Talk which I recommend people to check out, and I'll post the link in the description. And talking about novel foods, that was extremely interesting. And how people can get a hold of you?
Just by contacting me on my email. I have no social accounts, no Instagram, no Twitter, no Facebook, no nothing, no LinkedIn. I used to have 15 years ago, not anymore, because I know the harm that social networks can do.
Totally.
I'm studying them a lot, to be honest. One of my main research streams now is on social marketing or influencer marketing.
Interesting.
So I'm doing a lot of research on influencer marketing, social influencers, what are the source and the message characteristics, and how to combine them in order to make your message impactful, incredible. I'm just published a paper on that. It will be available in a month. So actually, I published 2 papers that will be available in a month from now. So by email.
Awesome.
That's the only way we can get in contact with me.
Perfect. And for the people that are willing to try to eat some snacks, of course, we recommend to go to eatsmallgiants.com and order some online.